For a split second in Monarch's reveal trailer was a list of its developers. What caught my eye were names of former staff from the Shin Megami Tensei series, who worked on those titles throughout the 90s. Producer and director of Monarch, Fuyuki Hayashi, mentions being a fan of Shin Megami Tensei If, and cites it as a direct inspiration for Monarch. So it must have been a great opportunity for Hayashi to share the scenario writer role with Ryotaro Ito, who's been credited as the planner for Shin Megami Tensei 1, 2, Devil Summoner, and If. As a huge fan of Shin Megami Tensei myself, I'm interested in supporting new projects made by those who've worked on such influential titles in the past. It's refreshing not only having a developer-player relationship with Hayashi, but also sharing our love for the same series as fans, making it all the more exciting that they got a chance to work with the people who made those great games we both enjoyed. What gives me my identity is a combination of my environment, my experiences, and my ego. Having a strong desire to claim, shape, or express onto the world and others is a way to prove one's self-identity and existence. It's an intimately personal and inherently selfish thing. Even if a person's desire is to do selfless acts, they're still selfishly pursuing their own desires to do so. But this quality isn't inherently a bad thing, rather a necessity. The desire to pursue goals gives motivation to live. It's in how you achieve those goals that'll subject you to outside criticism. This idea reinforces that there's no such thing as absolute justice, rather that it's a matter of perspective and self-justification. Monarch takes these concepts and introduces power that escalates a person's abilities to achieve their desires. Within Monarch, ego becomes a really interesting topic full of possibility for introspective and personal growth for the characters and the player that I was really excited for the game to explore. The game begins as you awaken a week after a strange barrier has surrounded the school, trapping the students and staff inside. A strange mist is filling the halls of each school building, causing strange distortions and those within the mist to lose their minds. You soon find yourself dragged into another world existing separate from the physical world. This other world is home to dangerous beings known as demons, who feed on the egos of humans. A being known as Vanitas bestows power onto the player in order to fight back and return to the school. The player becomes what's known as a pact bearer, one with a strong ego able to use the power of authority. Using an authority is what results in the mist and distortions that spread throughout the school. When a person makes a pact, crystals known as ideals appear in the other world. When a person's ideals are shattered, a user's pact is void. So you begin exploring the mist within the school as you interact with the other pact bearers and clash with their own ego and authority. The story drops you right into the central conflict and misses out on communicating its potential scope. If the game started before the barrier rather than after, then it could have given more time to better flesh out what kind of characters and world you and your adversaries are trying to change while introducing the themes of ego. There would be a better contrast, sense of unrest, and understandable stakes once the barrier is set up. You'd know what exactly is taken away from you, and what your powers can do to challenge the status quo, making that chance at change feel that much more impactful. I liked all the main characters. I think the writing's best quality is how characters act only after properly thinking through their problems and circumstances. Even if they don't reach an understanding, both sides get time to discuss their conflicting desires and ideals with each other. They explain their convictions and justify the reasons for their actions. No one acts in an unexpected or unreasonable way. This, combined with their unique personalities and past experiences, gives them their own unique ego and goals to pursue, while having believable and identifiable flaws. I found the characters to be relatable each to a different degree, like Kokoro, who had trouble understanding others and grew to be an outsider because of it, leading her to develop a strong ego of isolation in order to guarantee safety and security as a result of her own interpersonal weakness. You get to spend a lot of time alone with each party member, which is really refreshing. This allows for more intimate one-on-one conversations, where each party member can open up and share things about themselves. The story splits into two main acts, Each act contains 4 parts with a new partner fighting alongside you during each part. The majority of Act 1 is spent challenging other pact bearers, with the goal of removing the barrier once all have been defeated. Most of the rival pact bearers faced in Act 1 are unjustified in their actions. It's interesting to see how their ego and powers enhanced and reflected their nihilistic views, but there's no ambiguity about their morality despite the effort. A shattered ideal communicates its pact bearer's thoughts, giving motivation to their desires. A wish to protect everyone at the cost of taking away their autonomy, dealing with the unfair pain of an illness by forcing that pain onto others. Being bullied to death, only to be saved and make those suffer as they once did. While the game feeds me motivation for their actions, I the player get to decide that these actions remain unjustified, rather than the game telling me these are bad people. Becoming a pact bearer isn't some form of manipulation, nor were their feelings amplified into making these choices. This was just a result of them gaining power to selfishly obtain their ego in an instant by force. I like the simplicity of these people owning their actions. There was only one pact bearer that lacked a baffling amount of nuance. Committing arson and burning every member of the school baseball team alive because their captain broke up with you isn't the least bit convincing and felt cartoonishly evil. Thankfully, that's the only example to that degree. Act 1 spends most of its time interacting with these other pact bearers, introducing you to the rules of this world. It feels just a little slow as there isn't much in the way of learning about the overarching cause of these events. It became more of a checklist to remove the pact bearers and clear the mist. However, once Act 2 starts, more aspects begin to reveal themselves, and you'll have a better understanding of the events in motion. In Act 2, you'll have spent more time with the remaining key characters, making their motivations feel more rational and understandable. Once you've finally begun making new discoveries within the game's story, Monarch takes that bit of progression and brings it to a complete halt with the worst part of the game. You have to play through Act 2 a total of 4 times, by repeating the same story elements with slightly different outcomes depending on which characters you've paired up with. Having to repeat content again and again was not fun and made this section an absolute drag. What's worse is when the characters themselves start to act inconsistent between the repeated story elements. They'll act out of character in order to justify giving you more gameplay through conflict. The majority of Act 2 adds more conflict to halt the story, rather than move it forward by blatantly recycling content for no discernible reason besides padding the runtime. When choosing a party member to join you through Act 2, you'll need to speak with them in order to entwine your fate. Instead of simply having a conversation, you'll be given a series of multiple dialogue options in order to reason with them. Pick the wrong one and you're asked to leave, needing to reset the same conversation again, only to choose another option. Instead of having a standard conversation, for some reason trial and error is involved. This has you repeat the same dialogue until you have the perfect conversation that convinces them to join you. Once you've convinced them, the player then repeatedly selects from a single phrase in order to give the usually silent protagonist a speech that seemingly comes out of nowhere. This only goes to illustrate the game's sometimes awkward presentation. A lot of minor things are presented in weird or unusual ways, from carrying conversations with the usually silent protagonist, to the camera locked downward when outside, to shading issues during cutscenes. The worst example was a character's dying last words heard through your phone's voicemail. Instead of carefully crafting story events or cutscenes, events happen without you even being there to witness them. You remain in control with the background music continuing to play, while a character utters their final emotional words.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
It lacks any kind of impact it could have had. At the same time, it at least tries to include welcome features, such as giving you the freedom to choose the order at which you clear each building. Monarch will scale enemy encounters higher after the completion of each building. Monarch has an interesting premise, but as soon as the game begins, it settles into a rigid formula. You'll enter each new building to be introduced to its respective pact bearer. Locations don't grow outside of walking through similar school buildings, hallway after hallway. The gameplay for each pack bearer is formulaic. You'll have a cutscene introducing them, navigating through some hallways, shatter an ideal, and repeat that process for each of the 3 ideals. Worst of all is how dull exploring the school buildings can be. New areas are covered in a mist that causes madness that's thematically cool, but makes the bland locations look even more bland. From time to time, Monarch tries to go for a horror theme, which would have been unique for them to explore more thematically. Currently, not enough is done with horror, or the horror mechanics directly inconvenience the player. Staying in the mist builds the player's mad gauge, and when it reaches 100, you'll suffer a breakdown and return to the school's infirmary. Students afflicted with madness roam the campus and can instantly max out your mad gauge. However, they don't serve a purpose other than to waste your time. You'll need to walk back from the main building infirmary to where you last were. The only type of puzzles you'll find are lockers and computers scattered around the school's campus that require you to find locker combinations or passwords by talking to specific NPCs, looking through found notes or student profiles. It's really dull finding your 50th locker with a piece of paper right next to it with the words, "the year the school was built" on it, just for you to sift through a bunch of text to find the password to move on. I began looking up the locker combinations and passwords online due to how little I cared about solving these puzzles. Visually, Monarch plays so little with its themes of ego, madness, horror, conscious, and unconscious thought. Even the combat arenas that take place in the Otherworld take only the smallest fraction of inspiration from the characters you interact with. The Otherworld exists only to be a battlefield, so there's nothing interesting to explore. There's so much inspiration in these themes that could create imaginative worlds where the reality of the school bleeds into the minds and madness of the other students. These nightmare worlds could have all kinds of environmental puzzles to replace the repetitive locker combination puzzles and endless school hallways. When it comes to the art direction itself, there's a lot that I like. I absolutely adore the art by character designer Sobin. It's so beautifully stylized with a focus on black, white, and red colors that follow into the game. Black and white reflecting the chess piece inspired character designs. The black and red skeletal and horror designs gives the game this edgy and rebellious vibe that's synonymous with the game's themes of strong self-desire and ego. If anything, Monarch is aesthetically consistent. It has this really empowering vibe through its color choice, character and enemy designs, winner-take-all themes, and featured music. Boss themes are these highly produced songs in collaboration with KAMITSUBAKI Studio. All it takes for Monarch to create strong, memorable moments are when all of these elements come together to assault your senses with style and hype.
I'll sever you down to your soul! It's over!
Monarch has tactical turn-based combat. You'll control a growing number of units, take turns moving and attacking, and positioning them optimally for offense and defense. Most missions consist of eliminating all enemies with the occasional objective to destroy the Singularity Core, which is a target placed somewhere in the arena. A different party member with unique skills and stats will accompany you to face each pack bearer. Once you've reached a strong enough ego within a category, you'll unlock a Fiend to fight alongside you in battle. Fiends can be leveled the same as party members, but can also be equipped with vessels that boost their stats in combat. There's a lot to like about Monarch's combat that influences your decision making. Depending on where your units are, you can execute back attacks that deal more damage and avoid counterattacks. If enemies or allies are close to each other, they can perform assists. Beyond considering your available HP for art skills that consume HP upon use, you'll also be managing 2 other aspects: the Mad and Awake gauges. Madness raises with the use of authority skills, and Awakening raises by taking damage or with human characters' resolve art. When a unit's Mad gauge reaches 100%, their defense will be lowered while gaining a huge boost to their other stats. However, once Mad, they're unable to be directly controlled and may attack friendly units. On the 3rd turn of Madness, the unit will deal high burst damage to anything in the area around them, which results in a self-KO. It was fun strategizing with madness. I would space an ally away from my team and intentionally max out their mad gauge, resulting in massive damage in the place of losing that ally on the third turn. Madness can become annoying, as lowering the mad gauge with items or abilities alone doesn't end the madness state, providing no simple way of avoiding self-destruction once madness ends. While I enjoy the huge risk madness adds to the game, losing control and not being able to end madness safely made for some frustrating moments that resulted in what I feel was too severe a punishment when I misplayed. But not long after, I continued to discover better, safer strategies. It's best to avoid reaching madness without a plan, which brings me to the awake gauge. Reaching 100% awakening will slightly boost your stats and allow you to use any arts and authorities at no cost while retaining complete control of that unit. If you can reach madness and awakening at the same time, you'll reach enlightenment, where you'll retain the stat boost of both states without the drawback of madness. The player character has a unique ability to resonate with other party members or enemies, sharing and combining their madness gauge, awakening gauge, stat buffs, and stat debuffs, with each target being resonated with. Resonate cracks the game wide open and is the most interesting and most useful ability in the game. You can do so many things, such as share and stack stat buffs with your party, share debuffs and ailments with the enemy, or most importantly, combine your Awaken with an ally's madness to reach enlightenment with any resonated units. Resonate becomes the one tool that can end madness when combined with an awakened unit. Balancing awake, madness, and enlightenment is really fun, but hard to do until you unlock the better tools and abilities that make the process easier. It creates this really dynamic gameplay where you actually want to build madness as fast as possible, so long as there's a unit ready to resonate and awake at the same time. Resonating does get risky in an unconventional way. When you resonate with a large group and an ailment like Charm hits, then no side can act until Charm wears off or a unit is killed and Resonance is severed. Resonance becomes a game-defining mechanic that gives you the freedom to play around and amplify all of the game's other mechanics. Your options multiply even further when you introduce the Defer system. Defer lets you pass an active unit's turn to a nearby unit who has already acted, giving them another turn. A unit can be deferred to as many times as you'd like, at the cost of increasing that unit's mad gauge. I love this system. Not only does it manipulate the mad gauge, but it gives you limitless freedom when strategizing. Each unit excels at different tasks, and Defer lets you maximize their roles to fit your current needs by focusing them with multiple turns. There's always options available for you to excel at combat. The only thing I would add is to show the exact amount of madness Defer will add before confirming a target. The further in battle you are, the more madness is applied with Defer. It forced me to estimate how much madness Defer would add, leading to accidental maxing out of the madness gauge, which, as mentioned earlier, can be too severe a punishment for what isn't communicated in clear terms. All of these mechanics are clever, engaging, and work well together as combat becomes this constant management of gauges and resonance. Enemies have access to the same type of spells, abilities, madness, and awakening, keeping a level playing field. The complexity only grows as your active party size grows with it. While all of this sounds great, it's hindered by one of my biggest complaints, which is how poorly balanced the game feels. At every point in the game, there are elements holding back the combat from truly shining. The early game, while easy, doesn't provide enough options to engage with its mechanics. Once the mid-game starts, you'll have access to more abilities, but be quickly out-leveled by enemies and bosses. Late game has all of the fun abilities unlocked, but requires so much repeated content grinding that it sucks the fun out of being able to fully enjoy the game's mechanics. Winning combat encounters provides you with Spirit. Spirit can be used as a currency to buy character abilities and consumable items. Making the resource for items and abilities the same was a really smart idea. It gives you the choice to invest in abilities that make your character permanently stronger, or buy consumable items to help give you an easier time in a single encounter. Plus, it solves the common problem of stockpiled items, as they're better sold for more Spirit to spend on more abilities. The problem lies in that levels and stats are tied to unlocking character abilities, meaning you need to prioritize your spirit on the cheapest skills rather than carefully picking what ability is most beneficial for you and your playstyle. I always felt behind in levels after the first area, leading to some infuriating missions. When near Vanitas, you can call numbers registered to your phone. Numbers are added during exploration that lead to side missions that can be completed for extra spirit points and vessels. However, due to the grinding required due to the poor balance, these same exact missions will need to be repeated over and over in order to level up your party enough to get through the main story. Each section of the game features a new ally and new fiends to unlock, but each new unit starts at level 1. If the protagonist dies, you get a game over, which is never a fun game mechanic. It's slightly less egregious since this is a tactical RPG, and you can find ways to protect the protagonists. The characters are even inspired by chess pieces, further expressing the developer's intent. However, the way the progression is structured, you never get to choose what to spend spirit on. Rather, the game limits you to only what's necessary. Why pick fun, useful skills when cheap ones will keep you appropriately leveled in line with the enemies? Why build a character's ability tree when you need to level up the new level 1 units swapped into your party? Why level other units when the protagonist stays in combat through the entire game and is your most important unit that can't die without resulting in a game over? The level system clashes with the game's progression at every step, causing your only solutions to be excessive grinding, manipulating AI, and only spending spirit on what's the cheapest rather than the most fun. If there was less of a focus on leveling up and stat growth, and instead had a simpler tiered system, similar to the vessel ranks, then the game would be less about repeated grinding and more about strategy, unlocking skills, and engaging with the mechanics. Both player and enemy units would have smaller numbers, requiring less balance, and maintain the freedom to choose story order while maintaining better balance. This would streamline progression, eliminating any grinding needed for the main ideals, and would further strengthen the importance of learning new abilities, as each will increase the number of options and strategies available to you. Side missions would be seen as extra content that still rewards you with better gear and abilities for players who need the extra help. If new characters and vessels joined at a comparable level to the protagonist instead of level 1, it would save you hours of repeating content. The game scales with the story, so why shouldn't new characters and vessels that join your party? As the game is now, I'm tempted to recommend easy mode, just to bypass as much repeated content as quickly as possible. The wait command lets units move and then heal a small amount of their HP. However, the AI in Monarch is not always aggressive, so you and the enemy can abuse healing done by waiting. This slows the game down to a halt, as most enemies don't approach, allowing you and the opponent to wait indefinitely until you're back to full health. Most missions had me abusing the AI as I'd wait to heal after an enemy encounter, and stack my resolve and mad gauge before fighting the next enemies. There's no enemy variety. From beginning to end, you'll see spooky, scary skeletons. They do have different classes, but nothing visually to identify them besides an icon in the battle UI. It would have been nice if, at the very least, each class was a different beast or creature type, giving variety for the sake of visuals and gameplay. That way you could easily identify the different types of enemies and know what they specialize in at a glance. Minor annoyances I found is that you can't lower a fiend's mad gauge outside of combat without visiting the infirmary. You're provided with stabilizer items, but can only use them on yourself. When resonating with other units, your moves are categorized by type, but only when you resonate, making sifting through all of your abilities in the later half of the game a pain. Monarch's excellent characters and character writing, combat mechanics, and strong aesthetic drew me in, but at every step of the way, there seemed to be something holding back any of the good ideas. It has interesting themes that aren't used to craft an interesting world. The story was tarnished by painfully slow pacing, repeated content with little variation that made my playthrough last longer without adding value. It had top-tier ideas for combat, diminished by frustrating balance and grinding. It feels like a game with a smaller scope in mind, but I think the product they made with that time and money is commendable. I feel like they focused on creating a good product with the resources they had, rather than overreaching and not delivering. There's a lot of excellent mechanics and ideas that if given a bigger story with more time to breathe, I could see something truly memorable come after this game. So I do hope this team gets another shot at making another game because I would look forward to it. Thanks for watching to the end. Consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this, and subscribe to the second channel for live stream uploads. I live stream on Twitch, and I also have a Discord. If you really like my content, please consider sending a tip on Ko-fi. All tips go back into my content by purchasing games for future videos or live streams. Links to all of these platforms can be found in the description below.